Okay. Well, and we're so excited to welcome the great Jaime Bull to our artist speaker series tonight. And Candace, who curated the show, can't be here, but she asked me to read a little section from her press release first. And then I want to introduce Jaime and then turn it over to Jaime. I'm the chair of the Visual Media Arts Department, and I have the great pleasure to have these great artists show at our gallery. So let me get to Candace's press release. So she she came to me and she's a curator, and she was looking for a space for the show. She's thought about it for a long time, and we didn't know how fitting this show would be to this moment right now. So strange. So politics caught up. But what Candace wrote is she says that this exhibition is about the complicated nature of being a woman and all the messy aspects: domesticity, representation, objectification, empowerment, and contradiction. Featuring artwork spanning from the 70s to now, Mess includes performative video, figurative photography, and experimental sculpture. Exhibiting artists, all women artists, each addressing a unique aspect and approach to the exhibition concept. And actually that statement is really true for Jaime's work, because you do all these things, right? Pretty much, or somehow your work is right there in the middle of this. And Jaime Bull, she received her BFA and MFA from the University of Georgia. And if you don't mind, I'll just read, I'll read a little bit. Some of you might have read it on the poster, but I'm not sure if everybody did. Jaime Bull builds a cast of sparkly clad forms that embody a strong, sexy, dangerous female presence. She's a collector and uses found, repurposed materials in her work to reference the body with a feminist perspective. She examines and questions our relationship with environment by highlighting a preoccupation with hoarding mass quantities of stuff. Bull is a recipient of the Wilson Center of the Arts research grant for her thesis work, Lady Beasts, an investigation of womanliness. She has exhibited in Atlanta with the Atlanta Contemporary. She has shown work at the Zuckerman Museum of Art, University of North Georgia, Auburn University, Albany Museum, the Lamar Dodd School of Art, and the COOP Gallery in Nashville. She's a Vermont Studio School Fellow, attended a 2-month residency at the Bernheim Arboretum in Louisville, Kentucky. She currently lives in Athens, Georgia, and teaches art classes at the University of Georgia. And with this, I'd like to turn it over to our wonderful artist. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Alex. Thank you for that introduction. You guys, I'm so excited to be showing in your space and with so many amazing artists. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I'm gonna start my talk. I'm really gonna be talking a lot about materials tonight, and then just this, like, you know, every time I put together a talk and I'm working on a new project, it's really nice to reflect and realize, like, all of these ideas have been building and building and building, and it's interesting to see them, like these themes that keep repeating in my body of work. I'm going to share my screen. You guys seeing this? Everybody good? Okay. All right. So I want to start with the first main project, I think, that really, like, set me on the course that I am today. It's a thing that I started in grad school, and I've come to find out, like, that, you know, I built a lot of my work off of these experiences, and this is like a big thing that happened to me. I went to Tampa, Florida, to this place called Weeki Wachee, which is this, like, kind of hokey drive up amusement park. But part of it is an underwater aquarium that's built into the side of a natural spring. There's a glass face wall and an amphitheater that you go down into, and you watch this live mermaid performance that's happening with, you know, the natural fish coming in, the whole, like, natural landscape, this underwater landscape. So it's this, like, you know, like, human creation that's been embedded into this natural world. And I contacted the mermaids. They let me come down for the day. I got the back of the scenes tour. They showed me how they put on their waterproof makeup. They showed me their costuming. And it's something I was really taken with is their costumes were just made out of lycra and like out of spandex and, like craft materials. But then when they got into the water and they began to move, the costumes came alive and became like very, very magical. And I started basing work off of this experience at Wiki Wachi. This is a picture that I just took through the aquarium wall of the mermaids under in the water. They also, they have this like long tube. It's like a long cigarette that they take little sips of air out of as they're performing underwater. So there's like all these bubbles happening, and it's an underwater ballet. I went home and started making this collage work that was based off the costumes and then also the landscape. So this is just like cut paper and aluminum foil. And I was using craft materials. I was really inspired by the materials that I saw behind the scenes at Wiki Wachi. They're like cut out papers that started becoming more dimensional, more sculptural. They still were wall hanging pieces, but I was like starting to carve into the forms. This is like a little like tool. It's kind of like a pasty. And then I started making these drawings. These are, just folded paper ink press drawings that resemble Rorschach tests. But I started like trying to make these mermaid forms, but they started developing into mermen. I have a whole series of these mermen, just like ink paint pressed folded painting drawings. And this got me thinking. When I was in grad school, I went to grad school at the University of Georgia in Athens, and we had this program where the art students would take over this hotel for the evening. This is the Bulldog Inn, and this is a 1960s drive-up motel. It is quite seedy. It's like the kind of place that you can rent by the hour. We would take over the hotel and turn each of the hotel rooms into installation space. And I did a piece that was based off the Wiki Wachi experience. So I covered the front window in this aluminum foil to represent coral, or they had this like bubble screen that they would, when scenes would change, you would look through. And I tried to recreate that with aluminum foil, but it became this almost like peep show into this space that I created in the hotel room. So inside the hotel room, the piece was called Identical Twin Mermen Smoking Cigars and Drinking Scotch. You could enter the hotel room wearing this mask, this dive mask that I created out of paper mache and put colored windows in. So your experience when you went into the room was really altered. Your vision was altered, the sound was muffled. It was like you were diving into water to experience this space with these creatures. And it was, it was like fun, interactive. I sewed their costumes. These identical twin mermen were great sports. They really interacted with the audience. There's also this, I transformed the space with light and with sound, but then there's also the smell of the cigars and the scotch. So it was like a really all-encompassing experience. And it was just fun. You could get in bed with a merman and and swim around the space. So after I created this immersive installation, I really started experimenting with sewing and sculptural forms, and I'm still thinking about this idea of water. But then I began thinking about this idea of movement through the world, propelling yourself through space. And I started making these boats and oars. These oars are really based off the whole tail structure of the mermaid, the mermen, and they just kind of grew out of that. They're they're like stuffed animals. I really like this idea of this kind of flaccid tool. I think there's something humorous and funny about it, but then also poignant, there's this struggle to move through the world, but you're kind of foiled. And the oars grew, and I started making these foam boats, again, thinking about, water, the ways that you move through water, floating on boats. Like you'll see, I'm going to have like a series of swimming sculptures. These boats are again made out of foam, and they're very stuffed animal like. They're boats, but they also kind of resemble spaceships. But this show I was basing off of my experience growing up in Georgia, going to Lake Allatoona, which is this muddy brown lake that in the summertime is dotted by these really sparkly, glittery fishing boats. And, when I was a kid, we would go to the lake and tile our boats together and make this big party island. So this is a reminiscing about that, with these forms and the colors. But I'm also, you'll see this as I go along, but collecting is a real big part of my work. And I was collecting all these 80s prom dresses, and I was deconstructing them and using them to embellish and to cover and upholster the pieces. So they are vessels, but then they also are like kind of bodies that I'm dressing. I also want to show you, I do a lot of revamping pieces in my work. So this is another piece that I use those same forms from and added a little bit to. I showed these boats in another space where I kind of blew them apart and like suspended them from the ceiling. This piece is called the Raft of Medusa. I'm kind of referencing that Jericho piece, with like all the sailors lost at sea falling into the, like slowly sliding off the raft into the water. In my case, it's like a little bit more of a glittery circus scene, but you can see I'm trying to reference figures in here with the prom dresses. This is a glittery leotard in here that is like a body. This is a 2-person show that I had with this woman named Lauren Clay, and she did all the wallpaper and all that. This is like a jet ski. But I love the idea that it can morph and change, and it seems like maybe it's like a mechanical robot, maybe like a rabbit head or something. Like it becomes, it's a jet ski, but then it also can transform into other things. And it's covered in a spandex upholstery. And while I'm making this work, so I also draw and paint. So I make sculptures, and then I also make drawings and paintings, and then I work back and forth from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. So I'm also making this work about bodies in water and moving through water. And then also like this like sort of relationship between women and the ocean, and then our relationship to the environment. So a lot of times my work will like meld. This is a clamshell bikini. So I'm referencing like women's bodies, but then also there's like clamshells or scallops in the ocean. And then I'm also playing with that idea of like repeated form to show motion, like how they do in cartoons when they're like showing like running or something and they do like a repeated leg. I'm doing that in this work. So like to show like flailing or drowning or like, treading water. This piece is funny. Like I'm going to show you some stuff throughout my talk, but this piece is really emblematic of future work, this idea of like sinking down. It's called sinking down in the tar pits, this like arm out, like asking for help, or like it's like the final breath. Okay, and again, this repeated leg kicking. And I had an experience last summer. I went with some friends whitewater rafting, and this is one of those, art repeats life sort of situations where we went whitewater rafting, and we hit a rapid, and I fell out of the boat, which I really think that this this picture is like foreseeing the future or something, that I was recreating one of my paintings in this real life scenario here. Okay, I'm a big collector, and one of my collections is women's one-piece bathing suits, and this is a piece that keeps on growing. I showed this piece at the Zuckerman Museum, and it's, yeah, a collection of bathing suits that I hang as like sort of as a party garland. And it keeps growing. I scour thrift stores and junk shops, and people give me bathing suits, and I keep adding to this piece. But I use the bathing suits in lots of different ways. I used the bathing suits in a performance piece where I tried to put on all the bathing suits and then take off all the bathing suits. It was not a successful performance. I didn't realize the power of spandex, and I got about 11 of the bathing suits on, and I felt like my lungs were going to collapse or my leg was going to pop off. But it made it interesting. It made some interesting stills, which I like this piece, like thinking about this good side, bad side, this idea of twinning that's happening in these stills. And then I had all these bathing suits. A lot of my work is about experimentation and play and arranging things, and just trying different combinations of things. So these are some of the, they're called bathing beauties. And I had a bathing suit. I had some plastic bags around my studio, and I stuffed one, and I had it sitting around. And I would have gallerists into my studio or visitors into my studio, and they would gravitate towards these forms. Like the paintings were on the wall, and they're like, what is this? I'm so interested in this. So I started making more, and I started creating groups of these things. And I really liked the interaction that they had. I thought that they had a lot of personality, and like something strange and interesting was happening with them. This is Cezanne's large bathers, and you have bathers in a group, some nude ladies, well, in my case, bathing suit ladies in a group. Like it brings to mind this painting. I played with this painting in my work. I turned it into a psychedelic color palette, and I had it printed on these towels, these beach towels, and I used that as a surface to put my ladies on. So I'm like referencing the large bathers in a two-dimensional world, and the bathers are growing out of the Cezanne painting. And I'm using these plastic bags. It started as convenience, but then, like when you're thinking about like this plastic bag, the connotation of the plastic bag, you have like, we're filling ourselves full of these commodities. The skin color to me is also kind of interesting, that it's like this sort of, I used a lot of like the Kroger bags, and it's like this like Barbie sort of tan skin tone. But then also I think about them as artifacts. Like this plastic is something that we're creating. It's like the Venus of Willendorf is a big inspiration behind this work. It's like the plastics are modern day artifact. It's going to outlive us. It's like the relic that we're leaving behind. It's just a close-up of the bathing beauties. So then I started experimenting with scale, and I do this a lot in my work, start working human scale and then blow it up. And I started sewing these giant lycra spandex bathing suit forms. These are them suspended on the wall, and I love like the folds that they get. They like really feel like goddess-like. And then I started stuffing them with lots of plastic bags, and they took on a whole new sort of presence where they like sit in the gallery like these giant beached whales. Yeah, it's just like, it's the fun to see these blown up, like people like you really, they're really in your face. They're like 6 feet tall. These I made as, I love them as, I love pairing them too and seeing the interaction between the sculptures. This is another pair that I made called Marcia and Jan, referencing the Brady Bunch and this like 60s, 70s aesthetic. There's the Venus of Willendorf, the inspiration behind these pieces. And then also there's the Venus de Milo. I get asked a lot about them. They don't have heads. They don't have appendages. That's the thing that makes the Venus de Milo, kind of infamous and like really ignite our imagination, is we really don't really know who she was. We really don't know like what her arms were doing or holding. So we're able to infer. And I like that. I like that with my sculptures, but then also, you know, it's like that snapshot of the part of the body that matters most for many women or gives the most disdain. You know, it's like the breasts and the butt and yeah, it's like just this like snapshot of the part of the body that gets a lot of wanted and unwanted attention. Nikki de St. Paul is another huge inspiration behind this work. Like I love like these joyous sculptures. I took a trip to her paradise garden in Tuscany in Italy. If you guys are ever close to this sculpture garden, I'd highly recommend going. It is like a jewel of Tuscany. She's created this garden that's all based on the tarot cards, and they're sculptures that, you know, you can wander around the grounds and explore from the outside, but then you also can explore it from the inside. So this is a big-breasted sphinx. This is the outside of the piece, and they're mosaicked and they're shiny and they're in the Tuscan sun. Like it's hot and bright and sparkly. And then when you enter the sculptures, it's like a feeling of a grotto. And even though it's covered, it's like going into a disco ball. It seems more peaceful and more shady and cool in the interiors of the sculpture. So there's like this real change from the inside and outside of Nikki de St. Paul's work. This is a playground scape that she's made. And this, you know, like I was inspired by those forms, but then I also see a relationship between those forms from this more recent project that I've been working on. This is my collection of wicker furniture from my childhood bedroom. I'm a child of the 90s, and during the pandemic, I went and harvested all my childhood bedroom furniture and brought it back up to Athens, and I started building these dimensional canvases out of wicker. And I loved the idea, like they are not glued together at all. They're just all balanced, so I can change the forms around. And I built these towers. And then I painted the towers in these, maybe like referencing graffiti, but then also like I think about like Monet's water lilies with this piece, and then like, you know, kind of like a hot sunset with this other piece. Yeah, making these dimensional paintings of piled wicker furniture. And again, this is this idea of this collection, this idea of like transforming these objects that we're really familiar with into something new, and like something that is kind of awe-inspiring or just strange. It's like something you relate to, but then are like kind of wowed by. With the painting, I was really kind of channeling Katerina Gross's painting, like thinking about, you know, like these like white objects and like transforming them as like this like psychedelia. And then I went back to these boats. I started making this like a sleeping bag, but then also a 2-person kayak. I had someone perform with it a little bit, like interact with the piece. But then also it went into this show called Fountain, which is a 2-woman show at the Lamar Dodd at the University of Georgia. It was me and this painter named Melissa Brown, who makes this amazing work. This piece was at the entranceway of the show. The show is entitled Fountain, and I transformed this kayak into something that referenced like a grotto, like thinking about in Tuscany, like when you like see these caves, like these caves that are also fountains. But it's made out of spandex. And stuffed with t-shirts, so it's really heavy. People talk about like it looks like a superhero mask blown up. This thing's pretty big, or it's like very vaginal, maybe like a pig snout. There's a Philip Stark stool balanced on top. So again, found furniture, this found metal-legged table, and then it has a little mini me on top balancing up there like a little baby. And then when you entered the show, there's another piece. This is actually really relevant, and I'm actually going to show you the project that I'm currently working on. So when you rounded the corner, you saw this structure, and it was like a pile of furniture, and again, covered in these 80s prom dresses. There's seashells piled on there. There's a yoga ball on top. It's a lot of like deconstructed clothing. I had just come back from, my parents have a house in Cape San Blas in Florida. So that's on the panhandle of Florida. And they had just been hit by Hurricane Michael. And I had gone down to help with the cleanup. And I was just like, everywhere I looked, it was an art installation. It was like just people's trash, you know, it'd be a dining room table with a pool float on top, with a grill on top of that, with, you know, like lawn ornament. So everywhere I was looking, there was these piles of these random things, but they like, you know, like when they were put next to each other, they started to play off of each other and tell a story. So I was really inspired by those piles. And I started piling and making these sort of things, which is really strange because I was just, this is a fountain. This is Artemis or Diana. This is at the Villa d'Este in outside of Rome. And I've just always been like very inspired by this. Like I love like all the different textures that are happening with the foliage, and then also these multiple like sprouting breasts, this idea of this goddess. She's also the goddess of the hunt. She's like a tough badass woman. These two weird cats on her shoulder. This thing has always just been a real inspiration to me. And I think that like a little bit of that form is present in this work. I think this form is present in a lot of my work. But it was really interesting. It's been really interesting. I just came back from Florida. I was going to give you this lecture in Florida, but I rushed back last night because there's another hurricane hitting Florida, and I was afraid it was heading towards the panhandle. Hurricane Ian. It has just hit the south of Florida and is heading up right now. This is another piece that was in the show, Fountain. This is my childhood knee board turned into a sculpture. Okay, so I was just down in Florida working on my most current project, and I had to rush back, but I'm doing this work that's based on this part of Florida. It's in Cape San Blas, which is near Apalachicola, Florida. It's like, if you guys know Panama City, it's a little bit south of Panama City, but it's this place called the Stump Hole, and it is suffering from major erosion. Every time I go, it's very changed, but it's this area that's like very surreal. It reminds you of Planet of the Apes or something. It has all of these trees, especially palm trees, that are breaking off and washing into the ocean. And the stumps that they leave behind are just very sculptural, funky, really reference the human form to me. It seems like these like bodies that are dead but have lived like a really fun and full life. So I've been really interested in these structures and wanted to make work based on this place, just to give you an idea of some of the tree stumps there. Here's some of the landscape. I mean, you're just walking along and you're like, oh, there's the sculpture, here's the sculpture. It's like just a really inspiring place. And I love being at the beach, and any excuse to make work sing by the ocean is okay with me. So I've been photographing this space. I've been making collages out of them. This is like just a photo I printed out and then painted on some like cartoon high heel shoes. And then I've been, I thought I was going to costume the stumps. So I've been making plans to like add sculptures to the stumps. But then I got down there and I started making these spandex forms and filling them with sand. So they're like these like sexy sandbags. And I was basing the forms off palms. But when I filled them with sand and they like sit on top of each other, just something totally different happens. So this is like, to me, this looks like a sexy little baby dinosaur. This is like a crushed velvet structure, like kind of like a step pyramid. This is the other thing that's happening with these photos. These are brand new, so I'm just still figuring out what these are. These are only 6-inch tall sculptures, but when they sit in the landscape, they look really grand. And then I have the sculptures interacting with the tree forms. And then this is like just brand new. I was just doing this yesterday. I'm like also just taking these videos and interacting with the trees and like just, I don't know, like thinking about the tree becoming the tree or an extension of the tree. I'm not sure what these are yet, but I think something interesting is going on with them. And I see a connection with the sandbag sculptures. I love that one. That's like, kind of like, what's that? What's the little hand called on Adam's Family? Is it just called Hand? Is he just called Hand?
It's Hand. It's
Is
hand.
it just Hand? Okay.
Yeah, just Hand.
This one's just called Hand. Okay, and then finally, this is last project is what I really think informed the work that's in your gallery right now, these bicycle short pieces. I did a project, it was called Rhinestone Cowgirls, and it was one of those things that it was like, it just happened really quickly. It was like, I made one, and then I made another one, and I was just, I was like on a roll. They're found objects. They are referencing horse and rider, but sometimes that idea is sort of skewed. You're not sure who's the horse or who's the rider. But I named these all based on my friends, and I just think they're a lady gang of horsewomen. And I showed them, I made this like flag thing. This is one of my paintings that I had printed really big and doubled up and printed on like a big flag for a backdrop. I was making characters in a play, essentially, to fill this space. And this is a little space in Atlanta. It's called, it's part of White Space Gallery, and it's like a little basement space that has like more experimental shows. And so I had these horses like lined up in this space, like heading out into the sunset. So it was kind of theatrical, and you would go and you could round the space and explore the different sculptures. But again, I'm just really inspired by wandering the aisles of the thrift shop, where I used to be, not so much. I haven't been thrifting as much anymore, but yeah, and just like letting objects speak to me, and collecting things that appeal to me, and repurposing them in sculptures. There's lots of things, like I think it's fun to like see things that you relate to, like over here on this, can you see my mouse moving? Over here on this like purple piece, that's like a cat brush. These are my old red cowboy boots. There's this little toy baby carrier. It's things that will bring the viewer in that they relate to, or had as a child, or like create some sort of nostalgia. But then there's also like something, there's something humorous, but then there's also like this form is like bent over. There's something a little bit tragic about some of the pieces. It's like really important for me to have that balance in the work. Making that work, like I think a lot about the work of Sarah Lucas with these pantyhose sculptures. These are called the bunnies. And I love this idea that something like so inhuman can be so human and so tragic. And you can feel so much empathy for something that is a stuffed animal or fake or inhuman. Okay. And then this piece too, like I think this piece speaks a lot to the work that's in your show, and using these found objects to reference sexuality in a really humorous, kind of like dirty joke kind of way. Okay, and then this is one of the pieces that I have in the gallery. There's these found bicycle shorts. And really what happened with these pieces, I was just looking on Instagram one day and an ad came up and I was like, oh, those are quite provocative. And so I started ordering. I ordered a bunch of these bicycle shorts and played with them, thought I would put them into sculptures or carve them up. And again, I tried stuffing them and something wild happened. And, it's like very penis, very vagina, very Mickey Mouse stuffed animal head. Some of these pieces in the gallery space are on turntables. So they turn around. So they're animated in a way. And again, I think like something really funny, something really tragic, something really relatable about these sculptures. And I think you can see that throughout my work. Okay, that is all I have for you guys right now. If there's any questions.
So you now teach at the University of Georgia?
Yes, I teach. Well, I teach part-time at the University of Georgia. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm teaching this semester. I teach this semester I'm teaching actually the senior exit class, which has been really great. And I teach drawing and painting classes. I've taught color and composition and painting and 3D. I've taught 3D classes.
Okay. So the theme of this exhibition is mass, and which means that women have to overcome their internal weaknesses or the dark side or the external negative aspects of the society to achieve a kind of beauty or the appearance of beauty. Is that correct? This is the theme of this whole exhibition called Maze. And
I think that's part of the theme.
Yeah. In the other works you saw so far in this Zoom lecture, the first part I've seen kind of like a more positive side, right? More positive side, more optimistic kind of feeling. And then the last piece you have is more like exposure of reality. I mean, the challenges, there maybe something private or something more negative. Or is my interpretation correct? And or can you give me some sort of kind of like an interpretation of your artworks related in terms of the general theme of this show?
Like how the last piece relates to the general theme of the show?
And other pieces too,
Yeah, well, like that, the bicycle shorts piece, like, and I think a lot of my work is about this too, like it's about athletics also, like it's about athletics like to make yourself feel good, but it's also about body image to make your body feel good. And I also think a big part of my work is that it makes you think about what it feels like to be in the body. So when you see those bicycle shorts turned inside out, you think about what it would feel like to wear them. You feel like what it would feel like to like strap them on. But that part is like in your face. And it's the same with the bathing suits, right? Too. When you see the bathing suits, you feel what it feels like to be in a bathing suit, like to have the weight of your body in the bathing suit. And like, I mean, being human is a mess. Having those feelings is a mess. Having this push and pull of beauty standards, but then wanting to, be healthy, it's like things like that.
Well,
Okay.
thank you. That was a great question, Ed, and a great answer. Thank you. And Jamie, what a
Thank you.
beautiful talk. There's some questions in the chat, so I want to read out Katie's. Unless Katie, do you want to read your own, or do you want to read it or ask it? Katie writes, can you talk more about stuffing? How do you know when to stuff something?
I love that question. When you know, what I do a lot, like I have lots of things pinned to the wall. I have lots of things sitting around. And I just play. I stuff a lot of things. I unstuff a lot of things. I'll tell you, this bathing suits that hang on the wall with like the, nice folding, like they had to get stuffed and stretched out to actually be able to like take that form. So a lot of the things that I have, have to be stretched. They have to have like a life before they look good when they're hanging on the wall. I don't know. I don't really know when I know to, if it's spandex, I try and stuff it and see what it looks like. Because spandex looks great when it's like pulled to capacity. There's something about that tension that I think really looks good.
So true. Kaya, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, I'm really sorry, Jamie, that I didn't talk to you personally, but nice meeting you.
Hi.
I really love your artwork so far, and one of my inspires me is the one of the vagina one, the rolling one. I really love you. Like I really like that. It gives me like inspiration of that. And one thing, the question about the little thing, the rolling thing, like the one of the rolling one. What is inspired it? Why you have that? Why do you make that thing? Is this like remind somebody, or is this like related to the harassment and rape?
I'm sorry, you're like breaking up just a little bit. Which piece is it? The rolling piece?
Yeah, the one on the rolling piece, so the one on the studio.
Kaya, do you mean the one in the gallery or one?
The one in the gallery, the bike shorts one?
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess you're wondering
the one
why.
Kaya's the one with the
go ahead.
boxers.
Yes, you're wondering why it's turning.
So one of
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
the one that's
turning
one. Yeah,
You're wondering why it's turning. I was trying to animate it. I was just trying to keep it like get it animated, and then also like those things that they use them in like jewelry stores a lot. So I was thinking like maybe like that, like something that's precious is like sort of like on display and turning around. And then like I like the idea that it's like a head maybe that is turning, like it's just to give it some movement. Yeah.
Another questions, the one of the vagina one, and the one I like bring it like all of them. What makes you inspired to make suicide cutie stuff like the vagina one? What makes you inspired to make two sculpture? I like it as well.
Well, like
what makes you, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
you know,
that.
I'm like, you know, I like to like touch on sexuality and talk about, you know, that the vagina is powerful. Like I'm blowing it up, I'm like celebrating it, but then also like saying like that it's powerful, it's in your face. And, you know, like just talking about the power of woman, the power of sexuality.
Jaime, I have to tell you, in the exhibition, it was interesting. There were a lot of men that came through who were very uncomfortable with those.
Thank you so much, sir.
No, thank
Kaya.
you. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I
people
can, oh my God.
yeah, that happens. Yes.
Yeah,
That
including
happens
our
that happens with my work. It's interesting. Like I feel like maybe it's conditioned. Like it happens with my studio too, that when some men come into my studio, they're like very deterred by but I think it's been conditioned, like it's like anti-pink, anti-dollhouse, anti-sparkle, and it's not really anti-vagina, but it's like being a little frightened by sexuality. But those bike shorts, I think, is interesting because, you know, there's the bike shorts that are made for men, and there's the shorts that are made for women. Both of them read to me like as penis and vagina, depending on the way that you're looking at them, whether you're thinking about them sticking out or being more concave. So I don't know. I think it's like a mix of sexuality with those. I think that's why I'm so interested in those forms. Yes.
I bet that.
Kaya, if okay, let's give
So-
Yugan a chance to ask a question. Yugan.
Hello, thanks for the talk. And you mentioned the idea of humor several times in your work, and do you try to like achieve humor like on purpose, or is it one of the attributes that you consciously like try to achieve? And I find it amazing when I see humor in like paintings or art, like sculpture, right? And what do you think is different than just regular, like the popular culture humor, like a stand-up comedy or like a funny movie or something? What I feel like they come from like different sources. I mean, you laugh or you chuckle or whatever, you get the reaction. But how do you think that? How do you think the humor that comes from like art is different than the one that comes from popular culture? That's my question.
Right. Yeah, I do incorporate humor into my work, or at least try to incorporate humor into my work, because really, like, when you're dealing with like body image, when you're dealing with this idea of mess, when you're dealing with I'm like thinking about like abortion being under attack. Like if you don't poke fun at and you don't add a little bit of humor as a stepping off point to start those conversations, it's going to turn people off, and you're going to shut down, right? Like if you don't laugh about it, you're going to cry. Like and I do think that it's important to be angry, but I also think it's important to be joyful and to have that balance. And I think that's where, I think that's what stand-up comedy is, right? Also, like you are talking about the dangers, that you're talking about, you know, the things that are wrong with this world, and giving someone a little bit of lightness about it, you know, giving somebody, you know, a way to keep on keeping on.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's why, and I think that's also, it's like an entry point also into the work. It's an entry point to be able to have bigger, more serious conversations.
So just a quick follow-up question would be like, do you see any artists like currently working today that you find a lot of humor in it, and they use humor as the stepping point? Do you see that in? Who do you find funny? Kind of
You know, I've been looking at, do you mean like a visual artist?
visual
Do you
artists,
know
yeah.
do you know the artist Rachel Harrison?
Yeah, Professor,
She,
yeah, doesn't ring a bell for me.
okay,
We'll get the
look
work
up
on
Rachel
Monday.
Harrison. I really love her work. Like she uses a lot of household objects, but then like paper mache's on top of them, and like yeah, and they're just funny. They're like quirky, but then they're also tragic. Yeah,
Okay.
that's somebody that I really like love her work, and I think it's really fun. And you know that artist that I referenced, Sarah Lucas, she uses a lot of humor in her work, but it's also just like raunchy too. You know, it's like, yeah.
All right, thank you. I look
Yeah.
those people up. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions for tonight? These are good questions. Jamie, do your sculptures have double lives? Like, do you keep them all in this format, or do you sometimes take one thing from one and use it for another? Like, how do
Yeah,
How do they work?
I recycle a lot of the materials, and yeah, reuse them in other things. And you know, stuffing them with plastic bags is great because they break down, but then I have all the plastic bags. So here, can I tilt you back? I'm in my studio right now. I have a loft up there, and it's just filled up with plastic bags. So yeah, there's but yeah, I reuse the pieces when I can. And that's fun too, because then they like have like, there's like a genealogy that starts happening with the work.
And one more question that's slightly related. Do you set yourself certain rules that everything you work with has to be found, or that you no, it's just whatever inspires you? It's not like I have to get this at a thrift store, or somehow it has to have a life. You said it has to have a life before, but not so. You whatever.
I love things that have a life before. Like I love those stretched out bathing suits. Like I love like that, you know, like the butt will be all pilly or something from sitting on the concrete, or like the top will be stretched out. But yeah, I love things that have a life before. I think it gives the work a spirit, that's something outside of me. But it doesn't have to be used or found. I sew a lot of stuff. I buy a lot of new spandex. I sculpt some things. I use some paper mache and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it doesn't have to all be found objects. I make a lot of the pieces.
Beautiful. So thank you so much. Does anybody have a final question, or are we ready to say goodnight?
Actually, just to say thank you so much, Jamie, to be with us with Professor Alex here, and even me, I was so surprised with the lovely sculpture. I hope welcome to the family, and I'm really appreciated to be talking to you. Even I'm not in school right now. I'm in a gym right now. My apology to my location. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your really nice questions too.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and come visit us when you're in LA.
I will. I'm so excited.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, you guys. Thank you so much for coming.